What is up, New York? It is prime time in the Big Apple. Rick and Keeler here with you on a special Wednesday night episode of the show. We've got a great episode planned for you today, episode 46. It's the last day of July. We got the trade deadline, and while the Yankees and Mets did some things, they didn't necessarily do the big thing. Was it a bad situation for both teams, or is it what we ultimately expected? The Yankees have won 5 in a row. The Mets took a series from Minnesota, and both teams head into August feeling good about themselves. A couple of local teams made some signings. The Knicks bring back a key big man. The Rangers bring back key defensemen. We've got Olympians to talk about. We got a New Jersey resident winning a gold medal. We got a Queens resident winning a silver medal. There's some good things going on in the Olympics. We got the youngest player ever appeared in an NWSL game and a pro sports league for Gotham FC. We'll talk about that. The Giants signed an offensive lineman. Aaron Rodgers news and what his preseason is going to look like. Curb Street says Rutgers is a dark horse for the playoffs. Oh, this is so much fun. We got prime time. It's all fun up next. Here on New York State Sports on iSports Radio, for all those sports. We will see you in just a little bit. And welcome back, of course, to another episode of New York State Sports here on iSports Radio, direct feed for all of the sports. Ricky Keeler here with you, and I'm excited to get to be live here on a Wednesday. Normally, I'm here in the afternoon for you guys. Now we get some little nationals, a little primetime stage, and they'll have a little fun. Remember, you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you get your social media, at IE Sports Radio. Be sure to check that out. If you happen to miss any part of the show, or you just want to hear me talk again, go to Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your podcast after this live show is over. Feel free to listen to me, take me on the go anytime you feel like it. You can also go to our website, iSportsRadio.com, catch our show pages, New York State of Sports. You can see the link here at the bottom of the screen. You can follow me on Twitter at NYStateSportsIE. You can follow myself, Advocate555. So we get so much to get into. We already got the chat buzzing, so please get in the chat room. We'll talk some trade deadline a little bit, but first, the best trades that sponsors that we have here, that's good trades that we acquired here at IE Sports Radio. So before we talk about the trade deadline, let's dive into some words from Planet Jerky and seal the deal wax seals, and we will be right back in just a minute.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
Of course, welcome back here to New York State Sports, 90 Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. And I gotta say, these are two excellent sponsors. We didn't have to give up any players to be named later or any kind of cash at the deadline to get this done. So as we get into August and you need some cool stuff to go to the beach or get some Planet Jerky, have some fun with that. You could also, of course, we got the fall coming up. You might have some cool wedding invitations. Seal the Deal Wax Seals is always great for those needs. And remember, you also go to iesportsradio.com. We got some cool merch in the shop. Be sure to check that out. This hat is not part of that. It's also one of our local businesses here on the Great Staten Island area. I also like the hat collection. It always usually works for me here on the show. As you can see, look, I got the beard shaped up for the primetime show. That's always great. Before we get to the trade deadline, let's dive in some of the chat. Philly special cards this year, which is great. We got Adam Karnick. Yes, we are going to talk Mark Leiter Jr. in a little bit. I'm going to tell you about some of those prospects. I know that you reached out about that. Ralph is in the house. Ralph, how are you doing, man? Jen B is here in the show of the land. Welcome back, Miss Jen. So we got some exciting stuff. Let's get right into it with the trade deadline. Wrapped up yesterday. And I think when you look at this trade deadline, it wasn't the big names. It was just the amount of names. Like almost I think every team was a part of a trade, which was really cool. But at the same time, you look around the league and we didn't get the big flashy trade. Like, yes, Jack Flaherty, the Dodgers, is a real interesting trade. But has Jack Flaherty moved the needle anymore like he did a few years ago? I don't think so. Garrett Crochet would have moved the needle, but he's still listing demands as we speak, so I don't know what's going on with that. Good thing he can list demands while the White Sox break the 1962 Mets loss record, because that is going to happen. But that trade did not happen. You also had a case where a lot of the bats that were expected to go did not go. Yandy Diaz didn't go. Vlad Guerrero Jr. didn't go. Of course, we'll get into Pete Alonso later. He didn't go. So with the lack of big bats on the market, there wasn't a lot teams could do. And I think that was really the issue with this deadline is there's no big trades happen. Because you're going to get those issues. So let's talk about the Yankees first. And they make the big deal going into Saturday's game is they land Jazz Chisholm Jr. from the Miami Marlins. Now, when I first saw this trade, it's not the prospect haul I was worried about because they gave up Augustin Ramirez and two other prospects as part of the deal. Ramirez was a catcher, was one of the top prospects in their organization. The Yankees usually do a good job of drafting and developing catchers, and they still have Austin Wells and Carlos Narvaez in their system at the big league level. So Ramirez is kind of blocked. I think he's going to do some things for the Marlins. The one thing that the Marlins have is Rachel Balkovec. She is in charge of the Marlins minor league system. She used to be a coach in the Yankee system, so she knows these players better than anybody. So that's where you have to kind of trust that she knows what she's talking about when she's looking at the Yankee system. She obviously is looking to get Ramirez for the GM, Peter Bendix. They made that happen. Chisholm's got 2 years left after this year on his contract. And when I looked at this deal, I said he doesn't really fit because he can't play center field. Aaron Judge is in center field. He can't really play second base. They were towards second base. Can't play short. Anthony Volpe's at short. And then there was talk that we're going to move Chisholm to third base, position he's never played before, both the minors and the majors. And at the same time, when people draft shortstops, they usually sometimes project out to be third baseman. So I don't think if you play the left side of the diamond and you've got an arm, I think it's easier to learn third base than it is, let's say, first base. So Chisholm to me makes sense because he's athletic enough. The only other question I had is what would be the vibe in the clubhouse? Because the Yankees have tried this before. They've tried adding swag into the clubhouse with Verdugo and Josh Donaldson from years past and trying to add that edge, and it never works. So what was Jazz going to be like? Well, it's only been 3 games, but Jazz has been everything in a bag of chips for this Yankee team, especially on Tuesday. 2 home runs, one in the 6th inning, and the big 3-run homer off Matt Strom in the 7th against a lefty gave the Yankees the lead. Yankees won that crazy game in 12 innings last night, came back at a 12:30 first pitch today, won 6-5, and Jazz is getting hits left and right. He's making good plays at third base. He's doing everything you could ask of him. And he just gives them another dynamic threat in the lineup. When you consider this was probably the best position player that got dealt, and I like to rip Brian Cashman on the show, and I will in a minute, because I think that there's a way that you can rip him for this deadline in some way. Getting the best position player on the market is what the Yankees needed to do because there's so many holes around the diamond, and it made me angry as a fan. I know Aaron Boone said the quote was out of context. Gleyber Torres saying I'm only a second baseman. You only got a couple months left in your contract, and you need to get a big deal in free agency. I wouldn't worry about what position I'm playing. I'd worry about how my production is, so I'd get a contract going into free agency next year. And where you got Jazz on the other side saying, "Look, I'll play wherever they want me to play because I want to win." So you kind of had 2 separate contexts in there that just didn't make sense. And Boone did say Torres will take grounders at third. I don't see him playing third base. Right now he's having a tough time playing the second base, so he made a great play last night on the LeMahieu ground ball that saved the game when Harper was up with bases loaded. The key is Jazz is the spark, and this Yankee team needed some kind of push, needed some kind of just vibe that was going the right way, and they got it. And when you think about it, they lose Friday's game to the Red Sox, in which they were up 7-4. They're down to their final strike on Saturday, and then Trent Grisham hits the ball off the wall in left, the monster. Yankees win in extra innings, which they never do. They've won 2 extra inning games this week. They won one the whole regular season prior to this week. They're a bad extra inning team, but they found a way to win both these games. The vibe has changed. And to go into Philly and sweep was big. And it was also help from this next guy, Mark Leiter Jr. The Yankees went out and added him, traded Ben Cowles, an infielder, and Jack Neely. And I was a little mad about this trade from the standpoint of they never gave Jack Neely a chance to perform in the bullpen when the Yankees had a need for a strikeout guy. So if you're listening out there in Chicago, I think you're going to like Jack Neely in the bullpen. He's having a strong year, getting up in the upper levels of the farm system. I think he's going to make sense down the road for the Cubs and at least get a shot at the big league level to perform. But what I love about Leiter, obviously he's got family ties to the Yankees. His nephew is Al. Of course, Mark Leiter was a Yankee as well. So you got 3 different Leiters playing in the Bronx. You look at what his day was like on Tuesday. He gets traded, goes from Cincinnati to Philadelphia, doesn't even get a chance to meet his teammates. And he's in the game in the 10th inning of a 5-5 game, and he holds it down. That's clutch. That's grit. That's a guy not afraid of the moment. And he is a strikeout guy in the bullpen, which they absolutely needed. I would have loved for him to get Tanner Scott from the Marlins, but I don't want to pay that prospect haul. Again, we know when I'm trading Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez when I get a contract from Juan Soto. That's it. Without that contract extension, you can't feel comfortable trading one or both of those guys. So you have to go for the next best thing. You have Leiter to go with Luke Weaver and Clay Holmes. We'll dive into Clay Holmes in a minute, but I love what Leiter did. And again, my mentality on the Yankees has changed. Are they a World Series team? No. But at the same time, they've tied for the most wins in baseball, despite having one of the worst stretches over the last month. So this is definitely a different team. Could Leiter maybe be a closer option down the road? Clay Holmes, to me, is really interesting. He relies so much on the ground ball, blows the save on Tuesday with the wild pitch to Schwarber, almost blows the save today. At some point, as much as the Yankees defend Clay Holmes, as much as they look at the whole, he gets the ground ball out when he sometimes ground balls find holes. I want a closer that can strike people out, and that's why I wanted Tanner Scott for this team. The question to me is going to be, does Clay Holmes stay the closer the rest of the year? And I'm looking at a guy like Luke Weaver who can strike people out. That's a guy I want in the 9th inning of games. It's not that I don't think Clay can't do it. It's that I don't think the style of pitcher that he is makes for a dominant closer. And this guy made the All-Star team, but he made the All-Star team largely because he was strong those last 2 months of the year. So that was really, to me, the big question of, can this guy be an effective closer down the road? We are going to find out at some point. That's going to be a big thing. Crook's Process is here. What's up, Mr. Crook, man? How you doing? Let's talk some Mets. And the Mets, they went on the margins. They could have made a big move as well. They went out and added Paul Blackburn from the A's. They gave up Cade Morris, who's had a really good year in the system, but he's like a bottom tier in the top 30 prospect, a rising star at the lower levels of the minor leagues. He's going to start Friday as the Mets make a long road trip out to Anaheim and we have a makeup game in St. Louis and in Colorado. He's a back-end starter. He just came back from injury. This is a guy the Mets need innings. With Kodai Senga out for the rest of the year, with Christian Scott out, they need innings because Severino's loading up on an innings spot where he hasn't reached in a long time. You've got to watch vets like Quintana and Sean Manaea. There's so much unknown with the Mets rotation. They just need guys. Like, they had to add a guy. And they put Tyler McGill in the bullpen for now. Do they go 6-man? We'll see. But I kind of like where Paul Blackburn is as a bottom tier starter that can at least give them 5-6 solid innings. I think that's really all the Mets necessarily need, because there wasn't that elite arm at the deadline they could get. They also went out and added a bat. They got Jesse Winker from the Nationals for Tyler Stewart. And look, the Mets have a love-hate relationship, at least the fans do, with Jesse Winker from his time with Cincinnati and Seattle. But the one thing that what takes away hate, winning. Takes away winning. And if the Mets win and Winker's an upgrade, look, Winker's an upgrade off the bench over DJ Stewart. And with Sterling Marte still trying to work his way back from injury, Harrison Bader came back, but he was battling some stuff. Tyrone Taylor got off to a good start this year and has been kind of teetered off a bit. You had to go add a bat in that outfield, and I think Winker can do that. He gets on base a ton. He has to learn to play the outfield because he hadn't really played it consistently in a while. But I kind of like the move they made there. They also added Brazaban from the Marlins, Huascar Brazaban. This is a guy who spent 10 years in the minor leagues. They go out and get him. He's 34 years old, which is crazy, but he's one of the better pitchers the Mets have in that pen. And this pen is only going to get better because they've got Reed Garrett. They've got, coming back from the minors, Sean Reed Foley coming back. They have some good depth. Daniel Nunez hopefully comes back soon. I think the biggest thing by getting Brazaban and getting Blackburn is you're keeping Jose Butto in the bullpen. As much as Butto can help in the rotation, you saw it in that Braves series when he got 9 outs on Thursday. And you saw it even against the Twins the other night when the Mets scored 15 runs and he finished the game. This is a pitcher that's going to get outs on a consistent basis. This is the guy that I can put in the 7th and 8th inning and handle a lead. They don't have that otherwise. So while Butto can help in the rotation, I think that the Mets needed bullpen help. So when I ask this question, did any New York team win the deadline? I don't think so, but I don't think they lost either. I think it's a net neutral. So look at it from the Mets perspective. You know how the Mets won the deadline? They didn't sell. Because as much as David Stearns says the goal is to compete for the playoffs, this was a seller's market. And the Mets have a team that if they ended up selling, they had so many pieces they could have sold and got great returns for. Whether it was Alonso, Severino, Quintana, Manaea has an extra year control after this year. You could list other names that they could have threw into the mix. Maybe Jeff McNeil, they could have maybe tried a way to get rid of. And the Mets played so well in June and July, they canceled that plan. They made it where David Stearns had to go for this. Now, they didn't go for it, but the goal for the Mets is to simply compete for a playoff spot. They're going to reach that goal, barring an absolute collapse in August. The expectation level is different for the Mets than it is the Yankees. Brian Cashman, the only thing I would have done is traded for Jack Flaherty. Now, Ken Rosenthal had the report that the Yankees were concerned about the medicals from Flaherty, which I totally understand, because he was battling a back issue. But the problem is, if you're the Dodgers, you at the same time can make the Jack Flaherty deal because you need him for October. And the Yankee fans should be jealous of the Dodgers and the Padres because they can make these moves and you can't. They have big farm systems and big pockets of payroll, and you don't have that. And that to me is where I think the Yankee Dodger jealousy is always kicked in. Like, you want the Yankees to make these moves, but you can only make so many of them. So that's why I think Cashman kind of messed up. But you again, best position player on the market. You added a reliever. You're now hoping to get Schmidt back pretty soon to help that rotation. You've seen, and I'm going to give some love to Will Warren. And I'm going to give some love to Will Warren from the standpoint that for the Yankees, what happened on Tuesday. Garrett Cole gets scratched with what is called general body soreness. Will Warren has to make a last-minute start. And he goes out there, gives a 3-run homer to Austin Hayes in the second. It's a 4-1 game, and he finishes 6 innings. And Warren's the guy that got up to a rough start at AAA, lost the 5 starter spots to Luis Heel, makes his debut. His first strikeout is Bryce Harper. He did a really good job. So that's a guy I think I would love to see some more of over the last couple of months and see what he can do. But both these teams head in the right direction. Yankees their schedule gets so much easier. They have a 9-game homestand coming up against Toronto, the Angels, and the Rangers. Mets, if they can survive this weird road trip, because they have that makeup game with the Cardinals, they're going to be a good position as well. They're tied for the 3rd wild card spot right now. The Yankees just a half game behind the Orioles, and the Orioles did not make those big moves that we were expecting. They added Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers, but they didn't get Tarek Skubal or Crochet. They were never going to get Flaherty back, so let's just say Skubal and Crochet. They added some relievers from the Phillies and Soto and Sir Anthony Dominguez, but Mike Elias didn't exactly make the big move that people are expecting. So the Yankees, at least for right now, hanging in there. Maybe Jackson Holiday is the big move for the Orioles. But I think you've got to be confident with where the Yankees are right now. They withstood their biggest hurdle, stayed a half game behind. They won 5 in a row against the Red Sox and the Phillies, 2 good teams. Now they have one of the easier schedules over the next month. They have to take advantage of it. If they do not, they will not win this division, and they'll have to play a home wild card game. I don't think they're missing the playoffs, but the goal has got to be to win the AL East. And for the Mets, goal is to compete for the playoffs. So to me, both these teams were their goals did what they were supposed to do. So we'll take our first break. We'll come back. We will talk Knicks and Rangers making a couple of big signings that can help their team going forward. Really excited to talk about that. You're listening here to New York State Sports, Night Sports Radio, direct feed for all this sports. We will be right back in just a minute.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, This is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And of course, welcome back to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. We're going to back with you. We're going to talk a little bit about Vegas, of course, the Vegas Raiders a little bit, because Giants added an offensive line from the Raiders. They seem to love adding Raiders offensive linemen, which doesn't make any sense. But again, we'll dive into that a little bit later. Let's talk some Knicks. And the big story from the Knicks this week is they have added their big man. Yep, Precious Achiuwa back into the mix, according to ESPN. 1-year deal, $6 million. And the Knicks have done a really good job this offseason. Even though they lost Isaiah Hartenstein, they went out there and at least gave some depth behind Mitchell Robinson. And you love what Precious Achiuwa did, because last year he played some big minutes for this team when they were battling some injuries, played some big minutes in the postseason, and he capitalized. He was able to do his thing defensively. I think he's bigger defensively for this team than from an offensive perspective. You're not going to get much on the offensive side, but he kind of fits what Tom Thibodeau wants to do. You need to have defensive players that can kind of fit into the mold of what Thibodeau's style is, and Achiuwa does that to the T. So overall, I think what this team did, getting Anunoby back, getting Bridges, they've added some depth off the bench. To me, their offseason seems complete, and they've also done a good job in saving money. They're still below that second apron. They can still make some deals if they need to during the season at the trade deadline. They have done as much as they possibly could to make this team a contender. And now it's about waiting for training camp, waiting for guys to get through. Of course, we have the Olympics going on. Team USA beating South Sudan today. Of course, nobody from the Knicks on Team USA, but maybe in the future somebody will be. So they don't have to worry too much, of course, about the Olympic break and all the Olympics and all those things, people getting injured. But for right now, I think the goal was always to bring Precious back. There was talk about Walker Kessler and Nick Richards and all those things. But if they could find a way to get Precious back into the mix, and you can tell he kind of wanted to be back into the fold. So ultimately, I like where this team is at going forward. I think they can do some good things and compete with the Boston Celtics for the Eastern Conference title. So definitely a good signing, and props to Leon Rose, Worldwide West, and that team in the front office for getting that done. Meanwhile, let's talk Rangers. Rangers make a signing as well. They bring back Ryan Lindgren. So Ryan Lindgren comes back. Ryan Callahan, of course, is in the booth. I'm going to move some things there in a second. But Lindgren comes back, a 1-year deal, $4 million. And to me, we talked about the Rangers a few weeks ago. This is the team that didn't do much in the offseason in terms of that big splash that you wanted Chris Drury to do. We thought the Rangers would go in and kind of make this team make that splash move that gets them to a Stanley Cup. But Lindgren, to me, is the grit that this team needs. This guy takes hits, blocks pucks, does everything he do, and they did a good job avoiding arbitration with him. He gets about a $4.5 million deal. Basically averages about 20 minutes a night. Only 26 years old. This is the guy I think going forward you want to see as part of that defense pairing for the Rangers. We're looking to kind of fix that defensive pairing. But really, this Ranger team, outside of Sam Carrick and Riley Smith, did not add much. Now, you could argue they didn't need to add much because the team did get to an Eastern Conference final, lost to the Stanley Cup champion. But the fans think we're hoping for something different from the New York Rangers. So I think that's something that you really want to think about going forward with this team. Maybe they do something at the deadline if they're in the same position again. But again, Chua makes sense for the Knicks, and I think Lindgren makes sense for the Rangers. Let's get into some soccer. I always like getting into some soccer here on the show. Of course, with the Olympics, you've got the U.S. men and the U.S. women qualifying for the first time since 2000 to the knockout stage. The Red Bulls were in action. Of course, the Leagues Cup is going on. Now, for those not familiar with Leagues Cup, it's where you get the MLS teams against the teams from Mexico competing against each other. Red Bulls first team out of Leagues Cup, and they lost both matches in penalty kicks. Now, the rules are if you get to 90 minutes and it's tied, you get a point. If you win, you get 2 points. So the Red Bulls lose. They end up getting a penalty kick shootout against Toronto. They lose. They played at FC Pacheco and had a 1-0 lead in the second half, lost that game in penalty kicks. Now, the Red Bulls, I was reading the last 4 penalty shootouts they've been in, they've lost. So that's an issue. But one of the things I was looking at, they have a lot of players out with injury right now. And if they can fix those things going forward, when the MLS season restarts again, they're going to still be in good position. Maybe the month off gives them a chance to reset, get healthier. They're still in the top echelon of the Eastern Conference. They're still really good at home. I wouldn't worry about a Leagues Cup championship. I don't think that's really the goal for this Red Bulls team, as much as they would like to do that. So get some rest, get healthy, and be ready to go. That's the ultimate thing I think you worry about with this group. On the opposite side, while the Red Bulls ended up losing in penalty kicks this weekend, NYCFC was at Yankee Stadium competing, and they won their matchup in penalty kicks against Colorado. That was an exciting moment in the Bronx, and now they are in the driver's seat in their group, and there's only 3 teams per group. They will take on Cincinnati on Monday. Cincinnati, of course, one of the better echelon teams in the Eastern Conference. That should be a good test. Cincy plays tomorrow against Querétaro. So those teams will play against each other. So all New York City NYCFC needs to do is just get some points. That's a big thing for them. So they have a chance to really advance in League Cup, make some noise, and do some good things there. So both these teams have opposite ends of the coins. But shout out to a different NYC soccer team, Gotham FC. And you're going to hear the name McKenna Witham. Now, why is that such a big name? McKenna Witham signed a contract to play in the NWSL a day shy of her 14th birthday. And she got in a game the other day against the Washington Spirit. She's 14 years old, youngest player to ever appear in a professional sports league game. So shout out to her. It's a big, big moment, I'm sure, for the Witham family. That had to be exciting in general and the Gotham crowd. And right before the Olympics were getting going, there's some good things going on. They have their own tournament coming up. But to see her get some action in the game, very exciting and a historical moment in soccer. Remember, we saw the player, I think it was Kevin Sullivan for Philly, get in the game and just a teenager. So very excited to see those young players get some opportunities. And we're going to shout out some cool people in the next segment talking about the Olympics and talking about what's going on locally here in the area, because I've been loving the Olympics and been fun events to watch. And I don't know if you do what I do, is where I go out and I am purposely not checking my social media, because I like the whole idea of watching my events primetime and thinking they're live when they're really not. Now, if you want to go back and watch 2 o'clock, I think NBC's doing a good job. They'll air it during the day and then they'll re-air it in a special primetime Mike Tirico kind of vibe, which I think is awesome. I can't wait for the Olympics to be in LA. I wish part of the things I wish about the Olympics was when they had a shot to be here in 2012, I was looking at the New York City plan and looking at where the events would be. They were going to have, I think, the cycling here in Staten Island, which would have been really cool. But it would have been great to get the Olympics in your home area. And I think they end up going to London. But some good things. Some shout outs, and we'll get into these people a little bit. Taryn Rodriguez is here. Taryn, how are you, my friend? We got Alden from our Arizona show here. A lot of new shows here on the network. It's been real exciting to see some new voices on there. We're talking some different regional areas. So make sure you check out those shows. Of course, later tonight at 10 o'clock, it's Drewski on the Heart of Texas Sports. Get to see his cool Blitz machine. I'm sure I'll have a lot to say after my whole stick it to him on the 3 and Out division series this week, which shout out to Larry. He's been doing some great things to that. We're going to talk about that in the next segment with the New York Giants. And again, I think there's a chance they can go out and get a big player next year in frame, see if they're available. We're going to dive into that coming up next. We're going to take our final commercial break. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk some Olympians. We'll talk Giants. We'll talk Jets. And there's a national analyst that thinks Rutgers is going to be a dark horse playoff team this year. That should be a lot of fun to discuss. You're listening to New York State of Sports Night Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. One more break and we'll wrap up the show. Coming up after this.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Calise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold and have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Calise, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Everybody, this is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunderous Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to New York State Sports Night Sports Radio, direct feed for all this sports with here. I gotta say, shout out to Taryn Rodriguez because I am a big volleyball fan. Like, I played volleyball in high school. I was the captain of my team. This guy gives you every technical breakdown and everything volleyball. I'm listening to his show the other day, and I was impressed. I've been watching some of the volleyball because I tend to do that during the Olympics, especially the indoor stuff, because I played on a team. We have those like complex like sets the ways that these teams do. I'm watching the Serbia game today, and that was really a lot of fun. The U.S. winning the first two sets easily. Serbia rallies. You think they're going to lose this in 5 and have like a gut-wrenching loss, and turns out the U.S. ended up winning, so it's pretty cool. But if you want some volleyball, Taryn's the man to talk about it. He is the go-to expert here. That's why I think our network is really cool because we got experts of all sports, including volleyball. So I want to give him a special shout out as well. Speaking of the Olympics, we got to shout out some local athletes in the area getting the job done. Let's start with the U.S. gymnastics team. The women's team, of course, winning gold last night in the team competition. One of the members of Team USA is Hesley Rivera. She's from Orsell, New Jersey. She gets the job done, of course, with Jay Carey, Jordan Childs, Suni Lee, and Simone Biles. And they were impressive to watch. I mean, I was watching some of the floor exercises, the flips they're doing, and this was the redemption tour for them. So to see Rivera, well, she didn't get to compete in the final. She competed in the qualifying. I thought that was really cool. So anytime you can see a local Olympian do some things, it's fun. And Lauren Suggs, she's from Queens. She took silver in the foil fencing event where the U.S. won 2. So a lot of cool things going on locally. You know some cool Olympian stories. Feel free to share them with me on X at NY State Sports IE or at Rickinator555. You can email me, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. We love shouting out people on the show, doing some things locally with the Olympians, but also one of the cool things, at least in baseball coming up, we got the Little League World Series, where we got the regionals coming up. The Metro Regional begins this weekend, and you got the 2 teams competing at least to represent the Metro region and Williamsport in middle of August. Morristown, New Jersey. So good luck to them. And the good people at South Shore Little League here in Staten Island. I'm watching that on YouTube this weekend. They won the New York State tournament. Hopefully, we'll get to see them in Williamsport. I have been to the Little League World Series myself, and it's a great event. I went when shout out to Mid Island Little League. They were in the tournament, and I went to the game they were playing Arizona, and there was a player by the name of Cody Bellinger playing on the Arizona Little League team. So you never know who you're going to meet. I got an autograph from a kid on the Georgia team that ended up winning the whole World Series against Japan. But the atmosphere, if you have not been to Williamsport as a sports fan, you need to go for a day. It's so much fun. I got a shirt from there, a hat from there, and it's just a good way to take in baseball both from the U.S. side and the international side. And it's a good thing. This is probably some of the best moments in these kids' lives. And it's always good to support them. So good luck to Staten Island and Morristown this weekend. One of those teams hopefully will be heading to Williamsport in a couple of weeks and have a great summer that may be the capital for the championship. You never know. Speaking of championships, training camp going on for both the Giants and the Jets in their quest to try to win a championship. The Giants added a interesting piece this week. They went out and added Greg Van Roten into the mix to help their offensive line. Now, what's good about Greg Van Roten is he was with the Las Vegas Raiders. And, of course, the Raiders' former offensive line coach, Carmen Bursillo, is now with the Giants. So the Giants end up getting another player to help with their offensive line. Of course, Evan Neal's been battling injuries this camp. They had to move the Luminor over to that spot. He gets an injury the first day of training camp, but he'll be okay. And Roden gives them some experience at guard, which is the big thing they need right now. I couldn't have to slide John Runyon over to other spots. But the Giants need offensive line depth. And I think that's the big thing they need going forward to make this team have the best chance to compete in this division. Because I was on the 3 and Out special with Larry this week, and I didn't have that much of a positive outlook on the Giants. And I think they could be a 7-8 win team. But I made a bold prediction on the show that I kind of want to dive into. And maybe Drewski can talk about it on his show at 10 o'clock. Is Dak Prescott. I think Giant fans should pay attention to the Cowboys situation, because if Dak becomes a free agent and the Giants have one of those off years where they're close, but the quarterback play isn't great between Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, and they believe this team can compete for a postseason berth in 25, then Dak Prescott has to be in the cards. And the reason I say that is if you look around the league and you look across the region with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, you got to have a quarterback that can compete in this market. I think John Mara knows that. So I'm watching the Hard Knocks, and they had the draft special last night, which was the final episode, I believe, of the series, because they're going to start getting into the training camp stuff with the Bears. And it was interesting to see the board fall and how they were lost out in those 2 corners, but they ended up getting Newbin, the safety. It was kind of cool watching the board develop at the same time, especially even day 3 also. They're looking at ways to move up and down. You're seeing the calls with Joe Shane and Chris Ballard with the Colts and Joe Douglas with the Jets about moving back in the first round. The Giants were never going to do that once Neighbors was there. That's the guy they wanted the entire time. Going back to Dak, he would make the Giants relevant. Now, you could argue if they shouldn't overpay for a quarterback like that. But to me, I think you make that you've got to make that choice to go in and try to win. That's the bold move you have to do. Now, you can still draft a quarterback. And we've clearly seen, you watch the Cowboys, there's always they got Trey Lance behind Dak the last couple of years. I don't think signing a guy stops you from finding that quarterback of the future. But if you get Dak on like a short-term kind of deal, and you just pay him a big chunk of money, I think ultimately that makes this franchise, if they decide to move on from Daniel Jones, more relevant nationally. And the Giants kind of need that. We talk about having a face of the franchise. Right now, if you're looking at the Giants, who's the face of the team? Is it Kayvon Thibodeau? Is it Dexter Lawrence? Is it Malik Neighbors? I guess you could say Daniel Jones, but you can't trust him to stay healthy on the field. After losing Barkley, there's no... here's my question. Who is the Giant that you're putting up when Amazon does those Thursday night games? They don't have that. Dak is that. We can dive into that throughout the year, and I'm interested to get if you have some thoughts on that. Feel free to say in the comment section. But that's something I'd be interested in looking at. Meanwhile, we go to the Jets. Not a lot of news from Jets camp this week in terms of, like, at least that's a good thing for them. Not a lot of injuries, not a lot of big news. I guess the only big news going forward is you're not going to see Aaron Rodgers in preseason. Robert Saleh said that this week. Rodgers is healthy, which is good. You don't want to risk these injuries in preseason. That's a big thing. Both these teams will be back in action. Preseason is next week, so we will look forward to both those games coming up on next week's show, which will be next Thursday. Giants will be live next Thursday night, 7 o'clock against the Lions. And next Saturday, the Jets will be in action against the Commanders. That's actually a noon kick. I love those preseason noon kicks. That's always really good. The other thing I was interested in looking at this week, the Niners corner, Tavares Ward, was like, who's Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson's like, we're going to find out. So you're going to bulletin board material for the first week of the year. But looking at the Jet quarterback situation, it gives you a chance to look at Tyrod Taylor a little bit more. They did sign a guy like Ben Bryant. Again, those are guys you're not, obviously you don't want to see Ben Bryant in a regular season game, but clearly when you have a case, there's a limited amount of preseason games, only 3 per team, and 4 in the case of the Texans and the Bears, who play tomorrow night in the Hall of Fame game. You can't risk these injuries. You're getting reps with the joint practices. It's something to me that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Where you don't need the situations where you're going to need to get the starters those much reps. Remember in the old days, it was you play your guys first couple, starters play a half or 3/4 in the third game, and nobody plays in the fourth game. Every team does things differently. I think for the Jets, your goal really is to see what this offensive line can do, but without Rodgers, there's not really much you can look at. So there's probably going to be some more mystery with the Jets those first couple of weeks, but they start off with a tough stretch anyway with the Niners and the Titans, but their schedule gets easier after that. So the September becomes preseason for a lot of these teams. And next week's show, we'll dive into the preseason storylines for each game, how players we're watching, who are guys that are going to be on the bubble necessarily for these, for both of these teams. So we'll check that out as well. Now, our final topic of the night is we're going to talk some Rutgers football. We did last week. If you missed it, we looked ahead to the season, talked about some of the interesting things with Rutgers. I think they could be a fun team this year in the Big Ten. They don't play some of the big teams. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Penn State. So what was interesting about Rutgers is what is their ceiling? What do they have the potential of doing? So Kirk Herbstreit, of course, famous for College Game Day and Amazon Thursday Night Football, was on the Pat McAfee show a few days ago. And he was talking about Rutgers, and he said, somebody's going to come out of that conference that you really didn't expect, meaning the Big Ten, whether that's in Iowa, who knows, whoever has the most manageable schedule. Rutgers is a schedule that's by Big Ten standards and this Big Ten world that we're in, they can make a little bit of a run. Now, is that impossible? Not necessarily. I won't say Rutgers is a playoff team on paper. Do I think Greg Schiano can have a good year with this group? Absolutely. Do I think the schedule favors them? Of course. The one thing that was helped that argument in making a dark horse candidate, of course, the season starts in about a month, is that if the Rutgers makes the Big Ten Conference Championship and they happen to win, they're automatically in the playoffs. And then you take the next 8 at-larges, well, 7 at-larges, considering one of the group of 5s or the non-power schools gets in. Rutgers has a really good defense and a really good running game. Commandant guy, we talked about him, is one of the best running backs in the country. They've got to get better quarterback play. And the transfer from Minnesota, Calic Manis, he's a player that can help this team. I'm looking forward to talking some Big Ten football with my guy Adam over the next few weeks, diving into that a little bit more. But the Scarlet Knights have potential. I think the last time we really talked about them in terms of a big BCS playoff standard was when Greg Schiano pulled up the upset against Louisville. And it looked like Rutgers was going to win the Big East and get to a BCS game, and that just never happened. So I wouldn't say Kirk Herbstreit is crazy. It does sound weird to say Rutgers and playoff in the same sense, unless you're playing just playing the new EA Sports college football game, and maybe you can get Rutgers to the playoff. I actually started a dynasty with Rutgers. We're doing okay. We're not. My brother and I actually did that, and we're about a 8-9 win program. I think we've accomplished. We got a good quarterback. But speaking of the real life Scarlet Knights, they've got potential. They really do have the opportunity to make some noise, but it's about winning the games they can control. And you're never going to have this good of an opportunity where you don't play Michigan in the regular season. You don't play Ohio State. You don't play Penn State. You don't play Oregon. You get Washington at home when they're revamping their offense. You do have to go to USC, but you get UCLA at home, only making one West Coast trip, which is a big thing. They've got every opportunity in front of them. So that is something to monitor. Jen B talking about Columbus Crew needs all the Liga MX teams eliminated, and please knock out Cincinnati. We hate Cincinnati. Funny story. I actually had a family member, one of my cousins, their close friend, family members, plays for Cincinnati. Actually, so I can't really necessarily hate on FC Cincinnati, but that I think NYCFC's got a good test, and I really love what they did in the penalty shootout. So we're looking back here at this week. We're heading into August. So you wrap it up again. We're looking at the trade deadline. To me, again, let me get your thoughts out there. Do you want to see the trade deadline be earlier in the year, or do you want to see it happen later in the year? Because I think we need another 2 weeks for this trade deadline. Because I think we need to see these contenders kind of solve themselves out, so we get those big deals. Like, I want to be able to have more teams be sellers or buyers, like more teams establish what they are. Like, a team I was following yesterday would be the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that would be my buddy Ralph Calisto. So I want to see what the Pirates did. And they added a former Yankee in IKF, and added Brian De La Cruz, and they didn't really add an arm. And of course, you worry about what Skeens is going to be like. Do they let him actually finish the year, especially if they're in contention? Or there's another Steven Strasburg situation. You do have the August waiver thing, but it's not as lively as it used to be. So it's kind of what the team you're looking at. So I do think we have to maybe think about, if you're Major League Baseball, moving the trade deadline back a couple weeks. I think that's the thing that makes sense. You're going to get teams anyway that pay for only a month in terms of prospect haul. And you got to think of the whole on the prospects. And that's my thing. Do we talk about moving prospects or not? I'm somebody who covers minor league baseball. I covered the Staten Island Yankees when they were here for pinstripe prospects. I do some minor league work over at Mets Minors and Mets Mirais, talking about some things there at the Mets system. And to me, prospects are good, but parades are cooler. I mean, we love talking about the farm system, and I love going to these games. But if you're a team in contention, you got a shot to win a World Series. Like, you look at what the Padres did, and I love the fact AJ Preller's going for it. He picked a lane, he's going for it. The Marlins traded away, getting 14 prospects. They may not be popular now, but they picked a lane, and they're going with that. The Rays picked a lane, they're going with that. I hate the teams that get stuck in the middle. They do enough to get by, but they don't make a move. They don't get bold. They don't get risky. I mean, think about the Yankees were in that situation with the Cubs when they traded Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs. They got Gleyber Torres back, and everyone crushed the Cubs for it. The Cubs got a championship. And you look back at the Yankee side of things, they re-signed Chapman, and it ended up being a headache for them, and he blew every big game possible. And Gleyber Torres really hasn't been what the Yankee fans expected. You look at the Andrew Miller deal back then. They sold and got Clint Frazier. That didn't pan out. The Carlos Beltran deal. They got Dylan Tate. Dylan Tate didn't work out, only it got him Zach Britton, so I guess that kind of worked out. But they picked a lane. Yankees were committed to selling. I know people talk about, well, if you sell, you're going to lose fans in the clubhouse. Or lose the clubhouse interest and lose the fans' interest. And I look back to kind of what the Rangers did years ago, where they wrote a letter to their fan base saying, look, we're going to rebuild. And if you're honest with your fan base and you look to bring in young talent and people that the fans can attach onto, you are going to keep the interest. Because while we understand rebuilding has to happen sometimes. I mean, I look at the case with the Giants. They finally acknowledged that, look, they've got to rebuild. They've got to add talent back into the system. You look at the Yankees a few years ago. They realized that. The Mets last year realized that. Steve Cohen made some bold moves with Verlander and Scherzer, and it happened to work. Like, you would have loved if Steve Cohen and the Mets said, hey, I'm going to take on Javi Baez's contract and get a Jack Flaherty. But they weren't going to do that. There's not a lot of those things out there. So when you're evaluating this deadline, to me, I wish it was later, number one. And I wish teams were more bold and teams took more risks. I want more AJ Prellers. I want teams that are going to make this deadline fun and make it to where, like, hey, let's throw some cool names out there and see what sticks. But I digress. I hope you guys all enjoyed Primetime in the Big Apple. I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, if you're not familiar with my show here at IE Sports Radio, I'm usually on every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, but I kind of love the national spotlight. So if you guys want to make this a thing, we can work on some stuff. But Primetime in the Big Apple, I think, has been a success. We in New York love bright lights in big cities. In the big city, we love the national attention. Except when we're on ESPN every week with Yankees baseball. But it's been so much fun. I've enjoyed doing the Primetime show. I hope you've all enjoyed it too. Thank you to everybody in the comments section that's been chiming in. This has been really, thank you all that have been listening here on X and on YouTube. Again, you can follow me at the show at NY State Sports IE and follow me at Ricketeer555. To wrap it up here, both New York teams I think did okay at the deadline, but I think at the same time there are opportunities in which they fell a little bit short. But both accomplished their goals, and that ultimately is what you're looking for in the end of things. You also have a situation where preseason football starts next week. So next Thursday, we're going to dive into the Giants and dive into the Jets, the first preseason game. What are things you should be looking out for? Who's playing in that preseason game? We'll talk about that. We'll get ready to preview some football here on the show. I am really excited to talk football. Knicks and Rangers, you gotta love that they re-signed some grit guys on this team, Preston Chua and Ryan Lindgren. Both those guys are going to make impacts as the NBA and NHL offseasons start to kind of fade, and we'll kind of fade into doing some Knicks and hockey for a while until we get to training camp in about a month or so. But the expectation is going to be in football, both with the Giants and the Jets, and we'll talk college. I mean, hey, Kirk Herbstreit, I love the bold picks. I mean, how much more can you get if you're betting responsibly? Maybe the Rutgers gets you some chance at a playoff. Who knows? So that would be some fun things to get through November if the local team competed for a playoff spot. There's so much going on here. This baseball team have worked their way into contention. We're going to have a fun last 2 months here in the area. It's going to be so much fun to dive into some baseball. So next week, we'll talk Yankees, Mets, preseason. Maybe we'll get some low league World Series results. We'll talk more Olympics. Check out all those New York and New Jersey athletes competing for Team USA in their respective country. Get it done. See what happens there. Bring home those respective medals. And it's congratulations to those that are Olympians. It takes a special feat that not a lot of people can think about the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into preparing for 4 years. So from all of us here at IE Sports Radio, and from myself here at New York State Sports State, we'll put up in the next hour, 10 o'clock Eastern, Hard Texas Sports from Drewski. He'll talk Cowboys, and he'll talk so much more in the Texas area. So until then, I'm Ricky Keeler saying so long. Have a great rest of your evening, a great rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week here back on the network. Enjoy the night, everybody.